All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vanessa Kobilis. I am the State Incident Business Lead here for BLM California, now transitioned to the Wildland Fire Service. I am your facilitator for this afternoon's session of the National Finance Workshop. This afternoon, we are going to be talking about electronic filing, the risk, and a cost share refresher. I am currently the IBC, NWCG IBC rep for BLM. That will change in the future. And just for everybody's awareness, NWCG IBC come July 1st with the changes of NWCG will be known as the Finance Business Committee. And I know we still have some folks hopping on, so bear with us on that. Just some light housekeeping. The session is going to be recorded. We're recording all of them. We just ask that you keep your lines muted because they are active. But if you have questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat. You are welcome to ask live questions. We just ask that you raise your hand and wait to be called on by one of us. It's that way you can open up your mic and ask the question. And as always, just please be respectful of our presenters. We've had no issues thus far, but you never know. And then resources, NWCG's Incident Business Committee website is available to everybody. This site is where we are going to place the links for the PowerPoint presentations as well as the recordings. We anticipate to be able to provide this to you all next week, and we will make sure and get everything out to you guys via email in case you cannot find that website. And as I mentioned this afternoon, we are doing electronic files, email management risk, and cost share refresher for you all. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Bianca. She's going to handle the electronic filing. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so she can share hers. Hi, Bianca.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Bianca Spildy. I'm the Southwest Fire Budget Analyst, and let me go ahead and get my screen shared here. All right, is that coming across okay?
You are good.
Great. I'm also just going to turn off my video just during the presentation, but I'll turn it back on when we have questions. So. All right. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Bianca Spildy. I'm the Southwest Regional Fire Budget Analyst. In this session, we're going to walk through some practical ways to set standards and best practices for managing electronic documentation during the incidents. We'll talk about why consistency and organization matter and how aligning with NWCG guidelines helps keep our records clear and reliable. Even though these examples come from the finance side, these concepts apply across all functional areas working in FireNet. So just at the overall end product, just when documentation is well maintained, audits and post-incident reviews.
Bianca?
Yes?
You're not advancing through your slides, just so that you know.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, not there yet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, just maintaining good electronic documentations provides more accuracy and is a whole lot less stressful for everyone. So, all right, so just a basic overview. First, we're going to touch on the NWCG documentation guidance. Then we're going to look at how to save PDFs, especially when signatures are involved. And then we're going to explore several approaches for building clean, functional folder structures that work well across the incidents. And then from there, we're going to shift into inbox management, including practical tips for staying organized, different email workflow options, and strategies for maintaining folders and files throughout the incident. Finally, we'll wrap up by highlighting key reference materials you can rely on all season long. All right, are those files advancing? Is it good now? Hopefully.
Yes,
Yes,
you're
they
good.
are. Uh-huh.
Okay, good. Just wanted to check. All right, thank you. All right, let's get started. For those of us who've worked on or have worked with electronic documents before the standardization, some of us might remember how challenging it could be. There were times when different teams had their own preferences for naming files or setting up new folders. And when new team arrived, they sometimes spent a lot of time renaming or reorganizing things simply to match their own style. So that back and forth created confusion, led to misplaced documents. It just made it harder to maintain a complete record of the incident. So for me, when I think back of this prior to the standardization, Calf Canyon stands out to me. It was a very large incident, lasted for several months, and multiple teams came through different ways to name things. And I'm sure some of you remember that. Extremely frustrating and challenging. So fortunately, the NWCG guidance now gives us a consistent foundation for digital documentation. These standards help incident management teams organize electronic records just for the same way so teams can function the same way across incidents or the geographic areas. They also support the creation of a more complete and reliable electronic incident finance package, which makes transferring the documentation to the host and agency much smoother. So with that being said, there's always special situations that might arise, such as unified command, special agreements, or additional documentation requirements. If that happens, you can always reach out to the host agency administrator or the assigned INBA to ensure everything is captured correctly and to meet their specific expectations. Okay, so now that we've discussed why, we're going to cover the how. So in many cases, the outer folder backbone is already preloaded. Once you get into the incident, you've all seen those folders are already there and established. But if they aren't, you can always use the working folders matrix. This matrix just lays out the standardized structure that we use to organize the file so everyone stays consistent. You'll notice that the parent folder begins in the finance channel, and then from there, the structure branches into clearly defined subfolders and sub-subfolders. In those sub-subfolders is where the actual file is housed. So you can also see on this slide, there's a notes section, which provides the helpful details, reminders, and tips to guide setup and ensure everything is aligned with the NWCG expectation. The matrix also reinforces two simple but important habits: keeping folder and file names short and avoiding deep folder nesting. Both of these practices help maintain a clean, functional file path, which is essential for reliable data transfer. All right, so now we're just going to get in a little bit closer to the guidance and the matrix. So in these examples here, the NWCG aligned naming convention helps keep documentations uniform. On this slide, you can see there's a couple of examples. So on the left-hand side is the guide, and on the right side is a snippet of the matrix. I like to think of the guide as more of like a quick reference. I usually have it open during an incident. I always look at it at the start of the season, just kind of refresh my memory of how to name files. I know I've been tripped up before with the example for the crew time report. You can see it says CTR A1 year, month, day, or year, month, day, month, day. That is not, you can choose what you'd like to use. That's just showing you, as you can see in the matrix on the right-hand side, you use, for a single month, you just use the day dash day. And then when the months cross over, you can use, like the example, year 26, March 27th to April 1st. This also helps to define, casual hire. How do you name that? We do not use a period. We use dashes. Periods are a no-no. So if it's a subordinate, you'll use their resource number, hyphen, and then the subordinate number. One of the tricky things that I always forget, the 286 and the 288. The final 286 has the resource number with the date. The 288 is the last name and the resource number. Another thing too is we don't like to delete documentation. So if there's a version 2 that comes in, you would name it the same, put a little v and the number 2. So just little tips and tricks and how to have a quick reference, but also a little bit more specific guidance if you're questioning how a file should be named. All right, so now that we're getting ready to name our files, we need to make sure they're saved so everything stays locked. So we're going to talk about saving documents that preserves digital signatures. The main goal here is to make sure signatures stay visible and intact no matter how the file is saved, opened, or shared. For some of us who've worked in finance for a while, you've probably ran into those situations where a signature was missing. I know that's happened to me. And I've been like, why did they send this in? It's not even signed. And I've emailed the resource and they're saying, well, it's signed on my end. So a way to work around that is just to make sure that you're always using the print option. This can also happen when a CTR comes in and it's not locked and people can type in their the electronic CTRs. You can see in the blue portion on this example. I've seen them come in and there's been no time displayed. But if you use the print option, the time magically appears. So I just get into the habit to always use print to PDF, and that is the preferable method. This print to PDF flattens the document and it'll also lock the signature in place. You can also use the Save As to create a clean version of the file, which helps refresh the signature. And for those that are using the Adobe Acrobat Pro, you can use the optimization tools, and that just adds another layer of protection, locking in all the data. So just it's important to use these approaches to help ensure your documents are complete, accurate, and ready for posting without any surprises. It's never fun to go into post time and a timekeeper asks, why isn't there a signature? So good to double check. All right, so we've learned how to save our documents correctly. And now we're going to cover folder creation. So there's a couple of methods. The first method I'm going to go over is building folders manually. So teams can build out their folder structures either in the Teams itself, or you can open the window and expand into SharePoint. SharePoint tends to make the process a lot smoother because you can keep multiple windows open at the same time, which it really helps when you're working across both the time and proc sides. And this setup saves a lot of back and forth clicking, and it's especially helpful when you're juggling multiple incidents. I also prefer working directly in SharePoint because it keeps my Teams interface open so I can still see the chats and communication from the rest of the team without losing my place in the folder structure. All right. Okay, so continuing on with the manual process, if you have a small incident or it's low complexity, a simple manual folder setup is usually all you'll need. With the fewer daily demands, the team can maintain a clean structure without relying on extra tools or automation. The system is designed to scale, so you can start small and only expand the structure if the incident grows. In this example, you'll see that I've color-coded a Forest Service AD. So some teams like to also color code folders to highlight items that need attention. Forest Service ADs will need a batch number and stuff submitted to ASC. It's an extra process. So teams like to highlight, typically in green, Forest Service green. The color helps that folder stand out just for to ensure that extra step is happening during the incident. So color coding can be helpful, but it's completely optional. If you do choose to use it, you need to make sure there's a clear color coding matrix So when teams are transitioning or we're putting it, returning it back to the home unit, everyone understands exactly what each color means when the package is returned. Maybe some teams will even undo the color when they turn it into the final finance e-doc. So just some things to think of. All right, so if you have a larger incident or high complexity, folder creation can become a heavy lift. This is where using EI Suite reports becomes incredibly helpful. Pulling data directly from EI Suite allows teams to automate the folder building process, which is a huge time saver with hundreds of resources. The automation keeps the structure consistent and just reduces repetitive work. It also helps keep pace with the operational demands without bogging down in a manual setup. So in this example, I just pointed to the export reports. There is definitely quite a few more steps. This is a very high level overview in this process, but definitely I'll have some reference materials later for those that want to dabble in the automation folder creation. So once we've exported our report, it pulls into Excel. So the data is extracted out into an Excel, and then you can paste an already established Excel formula that takes it a step formula. So as you can see on the left-hand side, you have the Excel data, you input the formula, and it makes nice little folder names for you. I'm not an Excel wizard. I copy and paste the formula. I read the guidebook every time. But for other people who do it more often, it's probably, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. But the full step-by-step process is available on the WRIST website, and I'm also happy to share that. And there's a few other people on here. I'm sure we can get them to share their guidebooks and how to paste that formula in. It does take a little practice, so just be patient, but it's extremely helpful once you've mastered it, because nobody really likes to manually enter 500 folder names. So, all right. So now that our folder names are nicely created, the Excel sheet is loaded into the C drive and it's ready to go. And the system will create the folders, and all that you'll have to do is select. So what I like to do is get my overhead or my time side, and then I'll select those. And it's a simple drag from your C drive over into the SharePoint. And within a matter of seconds, a minute, you have hundreds of folders automatically created for you. So it's a very neat feature. All right. So now that we've gotten our folders set up, I like to go in, and the next step is to kind of organize the email inbox. There's no specific, you have to do the inbox or set up folders first. You can do the inbox, you can do it simultaneously. But it just really depends on what the incident needs and what access you receive. Usually for me, I have access to the team folder before I have access to the incident email inbox. So usually folder creation is my first step. But once you have access to the inbox, you can utilize tools like tags and pinning to make it much easier to categorize and prioritize incoming messages, especially when multiple people are sharing the same space. So these visual cues can help the finance chief, unit leads, timekeepers just kind of quickly spot those follow-up items or route information to the right section. And it can just kind of keep the inbox from becoming overwhelming. For those of us that work in here, some teams I know allow email access, others don't. Some people that have the access, they'll create their own tag on an outgoing email. So then it returns, it's already tagged, and the inbox person can pin the email and ping the timekeeper in a Teams IM, letting them know that their email has returned. So just different ways of communicating. Again, not mandatory, but just a nice option as we're all working together. And not maybe sure who needs to know what, so we can, pin the time unit lead if we have questions to address certain things or just something to come back to and follow up with. So those categories can be managed, and you can add a bunch of them in a different colored tags. Another good thing to do for your email inbox is to set up an automatic reply. This helps keep communication consistent. It also lets the senders know their message was received and gives them a sense of when to expect follow-up. Automatic replies also include helpful links, forms, instructions, or alternate contacts. A link that I see usually added is to the electronic CTR or shift ticket forms. I've also seen circumstances where the team will put a little reminder list, like please send in your agreement, casual hire form, your RO, etc. Just prompting those resources like, oh yes, there is additional documents that I need to submit to finance. So just adding those little touches to your replies can really help streamline and reduce the amount of email back and forth asking for the agreement. Have you sent this in? It just kind of prompts a resource to send it up front. Okay, so now that we've got our inbox all kind of set up, and the next step is kind of choosing what workflow process that will be most efficient for the team. So the first workflow option we're going to go through is the flow method, and this is through Power Automate. I'm not as familiar with this process, so bear with me. And if there are questions, I may have to have someone else answer some of these questions. So basically, the process starts with creating inbox folders that will mirror the structure of folders inside the SharePoint. This will ensure messages move consistently through both the inbox and the finance channel. Once these structures are in place, teams can route emails through a standardized inbox, like inbox to finance workflow. So once those folders are in place, to make the automation work, it needs rules to trigger. This is all done in the inbox. So as you can see in this example, we're in the settings, in mail, and then we're in rules. And now we're aligning the rules with the folders created. So within these rules, there needs to be trigger keywords. So for the proc side, you would enter those keywords like the Viper, shift ticket, contract, or equipment. Time would be overhead, CTR, just those keywords that you want those triggers to put the emails in the appropriate places. So when the keywords appear in the incoming emails, the rules will automatically, sort those messages. And then they can also move emails into process areas, apply categories for quick identification, and it can flag items that were not routed through the automation. So once the rules in the inbox are in place, the next step is to set up the Power Automate. This automation reduces the amount of manual sorting required by moving messages and attachments through the workflow for you. This is especially helpful during fast-moving or large incidents. It helps the team manage workload, maintain consistency, and it keeps information flowing even when email traffic is heavy. I know these are just a couple little screenshots. Please know there's obviously more step-by-step things that you need to do. Very high level here. So again, this will be another resource at the end of the PowerPoint for those that want to get deeper into the flow process. All right, so once we've set up our Power Automate, so after the flow is activated, incoming emails are automatically sorted into the correct inbox folders based on their keywords. And at the same time, the attachments are placed into the matching keyword folder in the SharePoint. From there, the files can be renamed using the established naming conventions and then moved into a to be posted folder. This is where the timekeepers can go in and select them and drag them into, a lot of teams have individual timekeeping folders for each individual, and then they can take these to be posted, move it into their timekeeping folder and process from there. before moving it to the appropriate resource folder. So one thing just to important to note, as you can see on that top in number 1, the top one came in as an image. You have to also ensure that they are switched to the PDF format. So that will still need to be downloaded and saved as a PDF before processing and loading to the resources folder. And also don't forget to make sure that that signature was not missing. So as I worked last season in Flow a little bit more, I learned that there is a lot of behind the scenes monitoring that needs to happen with Power Automate. So it's really good to have an experienced flow manager or someone with a little bit more experience. On an incident that I was helping with another individual, our main flow expert went on days off, and I didn't know that the flow can break. And so this was during a team transition, and emails were not coming in. And the other individual and I are like, well, there's always that kind of that lag when a team transitions. Well, come to find out, the flow was broken for a couple of hours. So when the person figured this out, they were able to fix it, turn the flow back on, and then we definitely had some renaming and some uploading to take place. So, but anyway, so just be mindful of that, monitoring if emails stop flowing or there is a little downtime. Make sure you're going in and testing that Power Automate just to make sure everything is functioning still. All right, so another option a team can use is kind of the manual flow process. It's basically where the inbox individual is the flow. So in this example, you can see where we have a couple inbox individuals and they've created working folders on the left-hand side. And an inbox, emails come into the inbox, and that's all fair game. The inbox person essentially just selects those emails, drags and drops into their inbox working folder, and processes the email from there. So very much like a manual flow, the inbox person will save the document using the naming convention. And once the file is saved into the PDF format, the button on the right-hand side, as you can see, archive. A lot of teams just like to click archive rather than sorting it. It just puts it into a nice clean location and it archives the email for reference if needed later. So once the document has been saved, the inbox manual flow would upload the folder to a to be posted folder. And with the same process as the automated flow, timekeepers typically will just go in, grab a bunch of them, and drag them into their working timekeeping folder. So very similar to a flow, but maybe this is used on smaller incidents, teams that like to just be more hands-on. The individual inboxers, can be the manual flow. All right, so another option, or I guess maybe the final option that I'm aware of is using a tracking spreadsheet. The spreadsheet provides a centralized way to record process emails, and it gives the team a clear view of what has been completed and what still needs attention. By maintaining the shared log, the team gains transparency across shifts, and it's ensuring everyone can see progress and pick up work seamlessly. During high volume operational periods, the tool is especially valuable, helping ensure nothing is missed and that documentation remains accurate, consistent, and easy to audit. The setup's the same. The inbox individuals will have working folders inside the inbox. Emails come in, they're selected and drag over to your working folder. Same process, it mirrors the same steps. You save it as a PDF. And then once it's saved, you can archive the email. However, the difference is the document is then uploaded into the resources folder directly. And so this direct to folder method helps prevent misplaced documents, which can be a common issue when multiple people are in SharePoint and multiple files are being moved across. And I'm sure we've all come across a few files that have been misplaced in folders. Not an issue, just something that if you do see that, just clean it up and move it to the appropriate folder. But so this process, it kind of streamlines and just ensures that the PDF is placed exactly where it needs to be. Once this file is uploaded into the resources folder, as you can see, there's a copy link button. The inboxer will click that link and will paste the link onto the tracking spreadsheet. And this is where the timekeepers can just click the link, and this link will take them directly into the resources folder for posting. After the document is posted, typically we do people just initial, just to show that, okay, this one's been done. Sometimes on this sheet, when multiple people are on here sharing it, you can see where people are at on the sheet. And a lot of times teams will just highlight a section like, okay, I'm working this part, and it just kind of lets people know, okay, I'm hovering over here, this is what I'm doing, and then they just initial the lines that they've completed. Just one important thing to keep in mind, if the folders do get renamed, the link will break. In those cases, the timekeeper can still access the folder by navigating through the SharePoint manually. However, if the naming convention is used and established, folders really shouldn't be renamed. And so that should be a non-issue. The other reason the link would be broken is if the file was moved and maybe put into the final or to be audited folder and ready to go into the final e-box. And then so another downfall, I've just heard of situations where unfortunately people were removing other people's initials just to claim that they were the ones that were actually posting. I think this is just really unfortunate because this tool is just this tool isn't meant to call anyone out. Everyone on the incident brings different experience levels, and naturally the people with more time in the role will end up with more initials on the sheet. This is just simply a tracking tool, not a performance scoreboard. The spreadsheet is the one method I've used the most, but having worked with all of these workflows, I can say each one has its own pros and cons. I'm just of the mindset, it's always to support whatever system the team chooses, and it's good to be well-rounded and familiar with the multiple approaches. It makes it easier to adapt to any incident or any team that's incoming that you might be helping. And who knows, maybe in the future we'll have a standardized process that blends the best parts of each method, just like we now have a standardized naming convention. All right, so after, as we all know, auditing is extremely important. Maintaining the folders and files definitely requires routine audits. This just ensures documentation stays accurate and complete, and the regular checks will help catch any missing or misplaced files, any naming errors. It just keeps everything clean, and it really helps support a smooth end of incident process. So this is usually an ongoing situation. And as you can see here in this example, a lot of teams will like to use the edit in grid view. And when you click that button, it opens up where you can type in and make additional comments. As you can see here in this example, I've gone into this folder and it's missing a CTR. I did an audit on this date, and these are my initials. This is just high level, right out there, informs everybody, this folder, what it needs. And then in a couple of days, or if somebody uploads that CTR into the folder, they can then edit themselves that CTR, or they could delete that message. And the next time someone goes through and audits, they can add additional notes depending on the need of that folder. All right. So just to conclude, I just want to provide a couple reference material. Um, as always, as many of us have seen throughout this training, the NWCG website has a lot of helpful information. This is where you will find that standards for the electronic documentation and also, the file and matrix and a couple of other nice little things to look at, the memos. And then also, which I found very helpful, RISC did a training, I believe it was in 2025. And so if you're looking for more in-depth instructional videos, including the step-by-step demonstration on how to set up Flow from start to finish, or utilizing the EI suite to create folders with a massive Excel formula, you'll find these great resources on the RISC website, as well as lots of other helpful information. Each one of these folders have days, and you can watch the videos. It's a great resource and a good refresher as we begin the next season. And lastly, just want to highlight that a lot of the Coordination Center websites do offer extensive guidance on instant business management and related processes. So these they also make it for a reliable go-to throughout the season and have a bunch of forms and things that teams might need or resources may need. So thank you. That concludes the presentation, and maybe we can have an open discussion or any questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Bianca. Appreciate that. I do not see any questions in the chat. So if you folks have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I can call on you. Let me make sure I'm not making a liar out of myself with anything in the someone did say, what is that link website for the flow information?
The wrist, yeah, is that the one? Let me go back. I stopped sharing my screen. Will these PowerPoint, it'll be sent out, right?
Yeah, so we're recording the session, and
Yeah.
then once we get the session uploaded, the PowerPoints, yes,
Okay.
will be included with them.
Yeah, do you mind if I copy that link and put it in the chat maybe?
Absolutely, go
Okay,
for it.
great. You can
Um,
also put in wrist and Google it, and but hopefully this little link tree will take everybody. Yeah.
yeah, and someone did ask, can you give us a kindergarten level instructions on the simplest, fastest way to rename a document when it comes from the email, assuming not using a flow?
Yeah, I use copy and paste a lot. It's my go-to. Um, it's amazing. I think once I don't know. It's hard because I don't have it up here just yet, but copy and paste is my friend. Um, so a lot of the
Yeah,
times the documents will already kind of have a little bit of the naming convention in there. Yep, somebody put in there Control V.
yes.
Yeah, yep, it really helps pick up the pace. Um,
Yes. Okay. Awesome. I'm not seeing anyone with their hand up. Bianca, are you going to stay on the line if any questions come up later?
yes, I will.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bianca. That was awesome. I learned something new every time. So appreciate you. You did fabulous.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have wrist with Serena. Serena, you ready?
Hello. Yep, I am ready. Okay, hopefully you will get the wrist presentation up.
Gotcha. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the wrist and just to kind of give you some information on those. Um, we do Well, actually, we do have full-time program managers for the RIST, but they are currently in travel status, coming back home from Salt Lake City. So they asked if I could go ahead and hide um, the presentation for you all. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of go over what RIST is and then some activities that we did for last year during 2025. So what is the RIST? So we're basically a team of ICS qualified folks delivering virtual support, especially when on-site resources are limited. We do, like I mentioned, have a full-time program manager and a deputy. They provide all of the oversight. They outreach to all of the folks that they bring in for their staff. And so you'll see that we do the areas that we do have folks coming in deal with planning, finance, public information, situation, expanded support, and as well as decision support. And expanded and decision support actually is something fairly new that we've been doing in the last year or two. And so that is something that we are definitely expanding the actual staffing on. So it's actually been kind of cool to see all of those pieces come together. Um, we do our primary focus, I should say, and where we have found our niche is actually with a lot with our type 3 organizations. And we're able to provide and fill gaps or holes that they may have in order for them to deploy. We also support dispatch centers and local units. Either when they're scaling back from local support and or geographic areas when their resources allow. So if there's a need for us to be able to come in and help fill a gap, we usually try to do that as best we can. So why does it exist? So if for folks that don't know, the risk, well, actually the concept of the risk was generated back in, I believe, 2017. It was prior to COVID. And it was a combination between the program manager and the deputy, Billy and Morgan. Try to put those two together. And they actually determined that, to try to make things more efficient for folks and to try to help incident management teams when they go out is to provide some type of virtual support. And they originally keyed in on like GIS support. So they created what they called the remote situation unit. And that provided all of the GIS products and everything that a team would need to get started with. And so they would go ahead and be able to get the team that far much ahead while the team was actually mobilizing to an incident. And so what happened was COVID. And COVID actually put us over the hump of being able to utilize more and more virtual support. And so, with that being said, that was one of the taskings that was provided actually to the IMRR group is to come up and see if there's a way that we can increase the capacity of what Billy and Morgan had started with the remote situation unit. And then that's where we got a handful of Nemos together, as well as Billy and Morgan, and we ended up generating what you see today with the RIS. And so it was homegrown, and Billy and Morgan do live out of the Northern Rockies in Missoula, Montana. Um, but it was basically what we looked at was to help solve critical shortages and challenges that teams may have when they do go out. And so that is one of the things that we've been able to have, much success on is being able to provide that gap or that service to those incident management teams, local units, and geographic areas, because we can pull in a lot of different qualified resources and being able to have all those skill sets to be able to help support them. Um, and then as you kind of see here, like I mentioned, the national scale fire management, that quickly creates resource deficits, kind of the stuff that things that are happening right now with the changes that are going on. And so risk is kind of that bridge to kind of um, close in that gap. And so we can be there to be able to help support our national resources and assets that we have. And then, of course, if it wasn't for technology, we wouldn't be able to do everything that we've been able to do. So it allows us to be able to bring in folks that have those skill sets and being able to utilize those to help again all of those folks that may need a service to be able to get them past some sort of situation. So the benefits that we have of using the wrist, we do already find the qualified folks. So we have those. Sometimes it's challenging for teams to find, folks that are qualified. So we can actually do that, have those folks on ready to go, and plug them in as the requests come in. Again, and with that, it's a immediate support. There's no delay because a lot of times, depending if we are within a heavy workload, we'll bring on staff that will either be actually working or being on call, so that if we get those requests, we can actually pull them in, and there's isn't a delay to get them to start working. The assistant can last as long as needed, but we do watch and adhere to all of the incident business rules. So we do try to make sure that our folks follow long length of assignment, making sure that we have work rest in place and all of those uh, business uh, uh, business rules in place, or guidelines, I should say. Um, if there is a need for mentorship, and a local unit, say, doesn't have anybody that they could be able to provide that, or an incident management team or a type 3 organization, we can actually provide that. And we've been pretty successful in having those folks that have the ability to be able to teach and mentor from a virtual standpoint. But it also has to be a two-way street. The trainee also needs to be able to be comfortable in being trained from a virtual capacity too as well. We do look for a lot of folks that have different skill sets. I think it just rounds out what we have in the program, so that we can tackle all sorts of things that may come at us. And so those are the folks, if you've got special skill sets, that we definitely would love to have you part of the program. We can also reduce stress on local units. And so if you find, if a local, say, dispatch center finds that they're getting overwhelmed with incidents, and maybe they've got an incident management team coming in and all these other things, and they don't have their expanded setup, they can call the wrist, and we can go ahead and provide that virtual support to either take on that incident management team, take on the pre-orders, take on those things, and take that off that local dispatch center. And they would be able to continue with the local unit work that they need to do as well. So we can alleviate some of that workload for them. Um, we're pretty self-sufficient. There isn't a need for us to be able to rely on any of the units or teams that we do support. So that is definitely one of the things that is kind of nice, because we come in, we take care of things, and then we leave. And so that is definitely something that I actually had somebody make a comment to me yesterday after I provided a presentation to the Great Basin spring meeting with their incident business and dispatch workshop. But it's kind of neat to have somebody be able to come in, and you give them the charge of what you need to have done, and they take care of it, make sure everything meets the needs of that requester, and then once we're done, we're done. We're cost efficient because basically what we tell our folks is that you only charge what you work. So if there's a request that comes in and it only takes you an hour to get that done, that is all you charge. You do not charge anything more than that. So we watch our folks to make sure that the hours that they charge are applicable to the work that they've been given. So if they have multiple incidents that they've been given, then they have their work period or whatever they've been able to do available for them to do all of those incidents. So they may work an hour on incident A, an hour on incident B, and 3 hours on incident C. That could give them a full day if that's what they needed to do. So we're in that respect, we'd watch how folks are doing their hours, and then we're just kind of maximizing our efficiency with our resources. We may have a resource, and this is one of the things of why the concept came about, was because Morgan, being in GIS, she has busy times during the day, and she really wanted to be busy all the time because she, was charging probably 14 to 16 hours on her assignment, and so she wanted to make sure that she was being efficient with her time. So she was actually starting to help other incident management teams with some of their stuff while she was on her assignment. And so that kind of got them thinking about, well, can we do this from a larger standpoint? Maybe we could get a group of folks that can be able to go over and sit in an area and then service all of these different incident management teams if there was a need for that to happen. So you can see a lot of different benefits that come from our resources. So last year, if you are newer to the hearing about what the risk is. This is the official definition that has been added to our National Interagency Standards for Resource Mobilization, our national mob guide. So you'll see here that the RIST is made up of virtual ICS qualified personnel. We augment and support incident management teams, local units, dispatch centers, just what I was mentioning, as well as MAT groups and their coordination centers, other coordination centers. And so wherever basically staff is limited or they're stretched and they don't have enough, we can go ahead and place those additional folks in there to augment that that organization. And the key word, as you see here, is augment. We're not replacing anybody on site. If they needed somebody fully on site to do things, then they would be best to order somebody in. But usually we come in because they can't get anybody. Orders are being UTF'd, and so they're looking for that support, and the risk can usually fill that. So we do try to hit those critical immediate needs of what folks may have. So some of this is the next slide is just going to be some like scenarios, of why folks would even look at utilizing the wrist. And these are true, scenarios that we've had over the years. So, and I will get to your guys's questions there. I've got some PowerPoints that will cover and answer some of the questions you've got in the chat right now. So I'm not forgetting about you. But anyhow, some of these use case scenarios, so they're traveling to an incident. Can you set up the initial infrastructure and initial products so they're not behind the curve when they get there? So that is something that we can do. You can call in and say, hey, we need to have the mapping product set up. And then the coordinator would communicate with the situation unit. They would find somebody, they would start working on all the products for that incident. So by the time the team gets there, everything's ready to go and they have all the products ready, and then the team can take it from that point on. They have a short duration incident and they need help with it, and it isn't cost effective to bring in somebody full time just to take care of the little bit of work that they need to do. We can go ahead and take care of that. And then we can do that pretty um, quickly as well too. And so some of those are the things that we can do. Like I mentioned, we do have a lot of type 3 requests. So maybe there's gaps in a type 3 organization. Maybe we can't fill critical positions on a team, or we have a staffed IMT on their incident, but it's more than what they can handle. So all of those situations, you can tap into the wrist, and we can be able to provide that support depending on what it is, and be able to allow that team to function as they normally would if they had everything filled when they went out. One of the other things too that we've noticed, especially with complex incident management teams, is that we can actually provide support during transition. So sometimes if you go into an incident, you're there for your duration, another team comes into place. There are times where that whole team, when they leave, they take everybody with them. There's nobody really that can keep that continuity going on between the two teams. And so it's very possible that you could bring in wrist in maybe a few days or a week before the team leaves. And then we can keep that continuity when the new team comes in, and then the new team can determine if they need to continue to have the wrist support in place. If they don't, then we'll go ahead and close out that request, and we'll be done with that one. So there are different ways that the risk can actually be utilized, but all of these scenarios are real scenarios that we've encountered over the last few years. So just to go over some key highlights that we had out of last year. So the risk assisted 226 incidents across the nation nationally, and we filled 945 support requests. So if you think about that each request could be a potential person that may have been ordered through IROC, that may have got UTF'd. But if you kind of think about it in the terms of dollars, you'll see there that we kind of came up with a dollar figure of salary savings there, but that would be is if 945 people actually mobilized to an incident, and we're charging, their full operational period to that particular incident. We wouldn't necessarily have any mobilization costs, so that would be an additional cost savings on top of that. And then, of course, we're only charging what we're working for that incident too. So kind of think about that. That's why we think we're probably a good fit for a lot of the incidents, in a respect to cost efficiency. Um, Alternatively, we staffed those requests with 305 virtual resources that came through the RIST. They provided support across 223 days. Because we maintain an availability list, we actually have about 1,200 people on our availability list. Not everybody is available all at once, and we can't use them all at once, but those are the things that are something that we take a look at when we need to increase our staffing within our program. And so half of those are not tied to incident management teams, but they are the folks that want to continue to still support incidents, but for some reason or another, they are not able to actually go on site or commit to an incident management team. So we can actually pick them up in the wrist and allow them to be able to help support from a virtual capacity, and they're still, keeping up the red card qualifications for those positions that they do have. Specifically for finance, last year we did have 61 incidents and/or dispatch centers that we supported last year, and we had about 130, 32 requests that we got that came through the finance area. And we supported, as you can see there with little bubbles on the screen, about 10 different geographic areas, and pretty much all of them in some capacity. And we had 11 positions that we filled during time as we went through. And that could be anything from a type 3 finance chief down to an equipment time recorder. So those are the positions that we normally take a look at. All of our support can be kind of, as you see there, tied into the type 3 organizations. That's where we had most of our requests come in. And then we had, some requests come in for the complex incident management teams, and then the local units rounded that out with the requests that we have. But you can also see in the bottom chart the agencies that we supported throughout last year too as well, from the U.S. Forest Service being the most requested one all the way down to actually a county, some county areas that requested some support from us too in the finance area. So we have been getting a pretty good workload through the years, and it has been increasing as more and more folks are finding out about us. So a little bit more on the finance support. These are the different areas where we've been able to provide our services. So we can do anything from incident support, which means like the setup of EI Suite, the setup of your files, the setup of the inbox, the flows that you just heard about a second ago. We can set those up. I've utilized the auto-generate folders many a time to set up larger incidents so that we can get them up and running, and folks don't have to do that. So we can do a lot on the incident setup portion. And then we've got all the functions within finance that we've been able to support, from costs to comp and claims. Personnel and equipment time are some of our bigger ones, but we also have to think that we're also servicing our external requests, but the risk acts like an incident management team on its own. So we actually have to have kind of a little finance section to manage all of the folks that come through the risk. So that's where our personnel time recorder comes in, because we need to have somebody that's dedicated to post time and to close out 288s and 286, or 288s, I mean, and for all our resources that come through. We don't necessarily have equipment, so we don't really do the 286s, but the equipment time folks actually are supporting a lot for our external requests that do come in. And we do a lot of auditing support too as well. There may be times where a lot of folks are behind or not getting staying up to date with all of their auditing. So it's very possible that they may have us provide them a few folks to go in and audit all of their records and make sure everything's done. The auditing support can also be for a local unit. We have done many a times been asked to come in and review a finance package at the end of an incident. And so you can actually have all of those folks go in and somebody dedicated to look at every folder and make sure all of the documentation is there before it actually goes to its final resting place. And then we talked about the mentoring and training already, and we've got folks that'll be able to do that from a virtual standpoint, and they do a really good job at it. And just to talk a little bit about expanded, this is one of our newer ones. This one actually, we've increased our support last year or so, but we last year we did support for dispatch centers through 19 requests with 10 different incidents. We did have 22 dispatchers with those qualifications come through the RIST and help us during 2025. And the main geographic areas that we supported was the Great Basin, South Ops, and Southern California, and Northern Rockies. And the types of things that they can actually support would be like pre-orders for a team, ordering itself, being part of expanded dispatch, doing the iClip cash ordering. I think that was a new thing that came out last year. So we had folks that were versed in that could be able to help support some units that may have not had that skill set to be able to do that ordering. And then I believe there's a new order tracker SharePoint list that they put in place, and I'm trying to remember if that was something that the RIST actually put in place. I think it was to help us manage new orders that are coming through and everything, all the workload that was actually happening within the dispatch center. So, how do you order RIST resources? And this is one thing that I really want to make sure everybody understands is that you do not order. If you want to get RIST support, you do not order it through the local dispatch. We already provide our own staffing based on the requests that we do have. And you actually call the coordinator. So that little first button there, you call the coordinator's number, and I'll give it to you here in a second. And you discuss what your needs are. And then the coordinator will determine which functional areas that they need to let know that they've got a request coming in. So again, do not order the risk support through the dispatch center as we will take care of all of our folks and our staffing. We do support all agencies, whether it's federal, state, or local, that calls this number, and we'll do our best to see if we can get a match to make sure that we can meet the needs of your request. We haven't dabbled too much in the all hazard support, although we are kind of looking at that. So it's going to be a case by case basis depending on what's going on. So there's a few other things that we have to take in consideration in regards to that and making sure it's appropriate for us to be able to do the work that they're looking at. And then, like I mentioned, all of our risk staff are already on a resource order. So that's why we're not asking you to order through dispatch if you have the need. And we, again, charge directly to the incident codes, and we can provide that cost information on an as-needed basis because we try to run the cost reports in our EI suite for all of our folks and the time that they've attributed toward the different incidents that we do have. So I just wanted to make that, clear when you do think that you're going to need to have a request for RIST, that you go ahead and just call the coordinator number, and they will go ahead and work through that with you. So every year, the RIST actually puts together what we call our remote incident support workshop. And so our next one, we're excited that it's coming again, will be the week of May 11th. And this is going to be a fully virtual workshop focused on best practices, functional area discussions, and skill building sessions. So these will be concurrent sessions going on throughout the week. So you are more than welcome to pop in any session that you would like to. Each of them have their own little meeting room. And so, you're able to jump into one, and then if you get what you need out of that one, you can go over and jump into another one because these are all sessions that are happening concurrently all throughout the week. Again, the sessions will be recorded just like they were last year. And I think Billy, the way I think he mentioned that the 2025 workshop last year topped about 1,000 attendees through across all of the sessions that we did have, and so the recordings are still being accessed by a lot of folks. So even if you can't join live, you can. Uh, there's a nomination form that comes out. Go ahead and nominate yourself. Everybody gets, in regardless. We just use the nomination to see the interest of folks that want to be able to hit any of these functional workshops. So keep an eye out on for this link tree that I'm going to show you right now. And this is my last slide, so I'll keep this up here. But this is our link tree that goes to the remote incident support area. You'll see the coordinator number there at the top. Please, if you need to make a request, call that number first. We do have an email, which is risk@firenet.gov, but you can always call the coordinator number there as well. If you haven't used Linktree before, if you tapped on the risk coordinator contact, it'll come up with the phone number as well as the email. And then if you just click on one of those, then it'll actually shortcut you to that area or put that number in your phone that you can just hit send and then end up calling the coordinator. With decision support, we do have a specific area where if folks have requests for WFDIS Next Gen and any type of fire analytics, that they can put in their own request form through this too as well. So because the workload there is pretty much separate from kind of what we do in the rest of the RIST, we have a separate form that they actually fill out because their needs are rather unique and don't necessarily fall kind of generically like we do for the rest of the functional areas when the coordinator talks with them. There are risk reports that we provide on a daily basis when the risk gets stood up. So right now we're kind of stood up. We do have like 2 or 3 people on board right now. We are demobbing a couple of folks since their work has been completed. But we do have some minor requests that have been coming in that we've been able to support. There are some FAQs, frequently asked questions. Excuse me. And anything and everything you wanted to know about the wrist, you could go ahead and you click on that FAQ, and that will take you to the questions and answers piece. Oh, my apologies. I thought I was going to get through this without my allergies hitting me. Um, so the part, give me. Okay, I think I'm back. Excuse me. Um, so the part that folks were, my apologies, interested about was the interest on how to get with the wrist. So um, there is an interest form here. I'll get through this. There is an interest form here that you can actually fill out. It'll have all the information that we need to be able to get a hold of you um, in case that you need to, in case we need to get our wrist information or our staffing up to date. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank goodness for office mates. So you can go ahead and fill out the form. That form, like I mentioned, will put you in a list and you will go ahead and provide all the information that were needed. And then also, you can go ahead and fill out what we call the availability list. And they that will let us know who's available if you are available. And so With that being said, that for me, that's usually the first place I go when I'm looking for individuals to be able to help support finance is going there to see who's available. If you are available, I'll give you a call and I'll say, hey, we got a request that's coming in. Are you willing and able to come support the risk? And if you are, then we'll go ahead and put an order for you. Hmm. So that's kind of the biggest thing is that risk interest form. And so if you clicked on the link tree and got in there, then I would definitely, if you're interested in helping us to fill out that form. You'll see that the nomination form for the 2026 workshop is also there. And you can fill that out. But like I said, everybody gets into the workshop, so don't worry about that. It's just kind of for tracking on our end. And then the feedback form. We usually like our requesters to fill out, excuse me, sorry, fill out the feedback form after we provided their services. So to make sure that we are hitting the mark and that if there's anything that we can improve on, that we can go ahead and do that. And then the last button there would be all of the presentations that the workshop has presented. So we, like I said, we record all of those, and if you wanted to go back and review something, you can actually go um, to this button and be able to provide um, or go to our area that provides all of the recordings, and then you can go watch the ones that you want to go ahead and watch. So with that, I think I'm done. But I appreciate, everybody and your patience with me as I deal with my allergies here. Um, but this is something that I've enjoyed doing. I've taken on the finance lead for the last couple of years. Very much enjoyed it, and I do appreciate all of the folks that have come through the wrist. I know a lot of you have been mentioning that you do like helping the wrist out a lot, and that is definitely something that we enjoy doing is having all of the different diversity of folks that come through the program, being able to help us and getting to know each other too as well. So it's just a fun environment that we've been able to have folks come in and be able to support us. So with that being said, there was a couple questions that I want to go ahead and just address real quickly. Hopefully you figured out how to get registered for the training. So just go in and fill out that nomination form. And then you basically get on a mailing list. So when they get ready to send out the schedule for the week, then you can go ahead and choose which ones you want to go to. um, let's see. CTR charges, uh, how do you get CTRs for charges by risk on our cost share and recoveries? So we are working on, we have a different way that we do our time within the risk, and it's very close to what you saw for the CTR app that was presented on the first day. And we have a Power BI that Morgan put together that actually develops our CTRs. And it develops a couple other reports for us to be able to provide that. So I think we've got some good options for you there, Glenda, to be able to provide some backup documentation for the time that risk charges to a particular incident, especially if it's a cost share or any cost recovery fires. So let me know and we'll show you some of the examples that we do have, but I think they'll meet your needs. Let's see. And okay, and yeah, the wrist has been actually a really cool opportunity for me. And I think for anybody that's really kind of gone through the program, and I think because of all the support we're able to do, it has been just a joy and a blessing to be able to be part of this program. So I don't see any other questions in there, but again, if you have any other information or interest or any questions on the wrist, you can call the coordinator number or you can hit up Billy, Morgan, or myself, and we can hopefully be able to answer any questions that you may have. So with that, again, thank you and for being patient as I get through my allergies here.
Glad it finally settled down for you, Serena. I wish there was something we could do to help you. But yes, as you said, great to have fabulous coworkers help you out in a pinch. Appreciate that. I personally have not used wrist yet. I say yet because I know it will come one of these days. So thank you so much for sharing about the wrist program and all the things, especially getting into the expanded world. So really appreciate that. And I'm assuming, Serena, you're going to hang around a little while. So if questions come up, we can answer those. I didn't see any hands raised. So with that, we're going to move on to cost share refreshers. And for that, I have Billy and Savannah. I know Billy's online.
Savannah's here too.
All
Hello.
right. Hi, ladies.
Just one moment while I get my PowerPoint up and then we can get started.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. How does that look?
Yeah, gotcha.
Awesome. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to present cost shares to you all today as a refresher, and what we're going to look at today is on the beginning stages, not the end when we're settling and exchanging numbers back and forth, but when we're drafting the cost share and getting signatures and things like that. So I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'll have Billy introduce herself. So I'm Savannah Paredes. I am an incident business specialist in the Pacific Northwest in Alaska area of the Forest Service. And I'll let Billy introduce herself if she's not already. She's probably already presented.
I have today, but I am Billy Hopkins. I'm a National Incident Business Specialist here at NWCG.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to go through the objectives first and then get through the PowerPoint here, and then we'll have room at the end for questions. So definitely we'll have some time to answer any questions that you pop in the chat, or if there are any, I don't know if we're allowing for talking questions or.
Yes, we are.
Yes,
They have
perfect.
to raise their hand and then we'll call on them.
Awesome. All right. So the objectives of today, let's see if I can manage this here. Got a couple screens up. There we go. So we're going to talk about the framework of cost shares, the definition of a cost share agreement, some different methodologies that you can use, mostly based on the NWCG template, a second level approval process if applicable, considerations and tips that you should be looking at for cost shares, and revisions or amendments to the cost share. All right, so framework for cost shares. They are outlined in the master agreement. So you have your national master agreement template for cost shares, and that I believe is on the NWCG website typically, and then they're dialed down to the geographic area. So the main template is tied with that NWCG template, and then the geographic area can adjust it as necessary depending on what the needs are of that local area in the states. We do write in the cost share template that it is mandatory. So when you cross jurisdictional boundaries between the state and the federal government or federal land management agencies, you do need to share costs. So or have a cost share agreement in place. So if you pick a methodology where you don't actually exchange funds, you do need to document that on your cost share agreement. So signatures that are required for the cost shares, it's just changed recently with the U.S. Wildland Fire Service, and maybe I'll pull up what Billy sent me this week about the language, but I might need you to explain that a little bit further. But typically it's like a forest supervisor. In the past, it was a district manager, superintendent. It could be a district forester at the state. So those folks have the signatory authority, and then it needs to be reviewed. If you are Forest Service, so if it's on Forest Service jurisdiction, it needs to be reviewed a second level review after it's drafted, and usually that's by an incident business specialist, and that's in the Forest Service handbook. So as far as signatures, Billy, do you have more information that you want to provide that came out this week about Wildland Fire Service for the signatures? Because I
Pretty
think that
much
just changed.
Yeah, the guidance we received is that the Wildland Fire Service will be signing the cost share agreements and not the bureaus. And that's all we know at this point. We don't have those delegations established yet, so we don't know who that will be necessarily, and it could be different in each geographic area.
Okay. Thank you for that update. We know it's constantly changing, so definitely good to stay on top of it. I'm going to pass it over to you, Billy.
All right. So a cost share agreement needs the documents the financial responsibility among the cost share partners. So we're sharing costs in the most equitable way possible, but equitable doesn't mean equal. Each incident is very unique with different resources, different landscapes, or infrastructure involved. So it's equitable as to what is happening and what those agency administrators feel equitable at the time. Sharing costs between federal, state, or federal and local governments. The statewide Master Fire Cooperative and Stafford Act agreement that provides our methodologies within the cost share Exhibit E. This is currently the 2018 version. We don't have the new one done yet, but we are working on it. So that's what you're going to use for agreements with your state partners. And then if you have fire cooperative mutual aid agreements with your fire departments, those also have a cost share exhibit in their agreements that you would use in those situations. So cost shares are required for multi-jurisdictional or protection when a wildfire has crossed the boundary or you will incur costs, and Savannah talked about that. Select a method for your cost shares, and we'll talk more about methods in a minute. And you need to document your cost share period. That's really important. When is your cost share starting and when does it stop? They don't typically run the full length of the fire, so there is a period of time when the cost share is in place. You can also document your non-signatory participants. It could be efforts by other parties that are not signatory to the master agreement. Maybe it is fire department resources that are taking care of your local citizens' homes or something like that. Your cost shares must be implementable. So the incident management team needs to be able to implement the financial components of that cost share if you're going to need any of those specifically later for reconciliation at the home unit. And it has to be reconcilable by the home unit. And if it's not, an amendment needs to be done to ensure that that happens. Okay, let's talk about these methodologies. So these methodologies are what's listed in that 2018 master agreement. They do look a little bit different than what's in the yellow book currently, but this is the current ones that we have. So each agency pays for its own resources, and these resources are primarily on their own jurisdiction or protection, or the resources work in support of the entire incident, regardless of where or what land they're on, but they're still paid by their own agency. So their agency pays for all their own resources. Mutual aid agreements, typically with your cooperators, use this example, this method, and they'll start their cost share after their mutual aid period is over if they're still out there working. Percent of acres for ownership or agency jurisdictional responsibility. That's a mouthful, AKA black acres. So these are the acres of record for each agency as officially mapped for the incident. If you have offset protection or other protection agreements, it's good to review the maps so that you have the right protection. Sometimes you'll get jurisdictional land, but not the correct protection, and that would matter later on. Your cost is apportioned by geographic division or percent of effort. So each agency pays a percentage of the cost based on the level of effort that they've expended or its jurisdiction or protection responsibility during that cost share period. Remember, it starts at one point and stops at another, so it's not typically going to be for the whole fire. So you can break these out by geographical locations, like Division A and Division B. You'll use maps for documentation in that regard. You can also do cost apportionment for the whole fire. That's common in California. So Vanessa is our cost apportionment guru. Reconciliation of daily costs. So these are daily agreed upon costs They're typically documented in an IEP. They're agreed upon by our agency administrators, and each IEP is part of that cost share package. Okay.
Right. So again, thinking about that second level approval process. So once you've drafted your cost share, so the agency administrators have looked at it and they've decided how they want to share costs and reviewed everything. There is a second level review that sometimes needs to happen. So the Forest Service does require a second level review, as in the Forest Service handbook. I just mentioned that before. And typically, if you have an incident business specialist at your geographic area, they would review that and sign it, and then you would get final signatures on your cost share. So for the Department of Interior, as far as a second level review goes, I think so correct me if I'm wrong here, Billy, because this may have changed as well, but you just would follow your geographic area process. Or maybe something different in every geographic area on who wants to see. Yeah. And with states and cooperators, same thing. Like every state is different. They may want their state lead to look at the cost share before it gets signed as well. I know that in the Pacific Northwest, most of our state leads would like to see that before we sign. And so that's just something to keep in mind before you get final signatures. Do it before you get the final signatures, because you don't want to have to go back and, maybe something needed to be changed. You forgot something. Get that second level review done before you get those final signatures. Right. Right, let's talk considerations. So, some things to consider. Agency administrators establish the cost share agreements, and they determine the appropriate cost share period and the methodology. So that being said, they have the responsibility, but they do need to involve key players to make those decisions. So you definitely probably want to involve your IMBA to help draft the cost share, or other things that may be delegated to the IMBA. Subject matter experts, that could be operations, letting the AAs know what's going on in the fire, and the appropriate methodology to select based on that and what's equitable. The FMO in the local area, and then of course your partners. So making sure everybody is involved that needs to be involved. And it's kind of a sweet spot, not having too many folks involved, but making sure you get the right players in the room that have information to guide that cost share. The AAs provide financial oversight. They establish the cost share objectives and actively participate in cost monitoring. So a lot of times, if you're out on an incident management team, finance will be asked to provide daily cost reports, and that is really helping for many different reasons, but it does help with the cost share. The agency administrators can monitor the costs and, just keep providing that oversight. So important to get those cost reports to the AAs. The IMBA or geographic area or local incident business specialist can be the liaison between the agency administrator and the IMT. They can provide training and guidance to those AAs. Maybe you have some new AAs that need some support and, hey, what's the best cost share methodology? How do I fill this out? What are your thoughts on this? So you can provide that training and guidance as an IMBA, or they can help you facilitate the cost share and routing them for signatures. So I know a lot of times the incident business specialist will be the tracker of that, going from one partner to the other, and then making sure it gets through to its final stages with signature. Some tips that we would like to share with you. So one thing that is a really good thing to do pre-season, if you are on a local unit, is to have preseason conversations with your partners to understand where they're at. So there may be things in your local area that maybe political considerations or different things that you would want to be aware of before you get into a situation where a fire has crossed jurisdictional boundaries and you have to make a decision in the moment. It's good to know what those things are, and that can help guide you in selecting the appropriate cost share methodology. Or even you have a methodology that is your go-to in that specific area, that you have agreed on that you will be selecting that methodology regardless of, A, B, and C. So it's just good to know those things, get with your partner pre-season and see where they're at. And that way when you have a fire, it's a lot easier. And maybe even you have a plan, getting, I don't know, making sure you get backup documentation that you may need. I know that in certain places, they track like they're going to be percent of effort every time, even if it ends up being acres, just so that they have that information up front. You don't have to do it that way. Maybe it's a lot of work, but in case they need that percent of effort documentation down the road, they already have it if that's the methodology that's selected. Intent and objective. Is it implementable and reconcilable? And so if you've ever been part of a cost share settlement, you know that this is a big deal. So you may have somebody write a cost share and then you come to settle it at the back end. It doesn't make any sense and it's not even possible to reconcile it. So it's really important that it's very clear what the intent of that cost share is on the front end, because in the back end, you may have to revise it if we can't make sense of what the intent was. And then it's important to document the agency that's providing structure protection. Another thing is equitability, and what does that look like for your local area? It may, it may be clear to you, but maybe your partner has a different idea about what is equitable. Again, that pre-season conversation, figuring out where your partner's at, getting that all cleared up pre-season. Equitability is really important to understand. What does that mean in your local area? Making sure you get it completed early. Again, if you choose a cost share methodology like percent of effort, you definitely need to be tracking that early. And so making that decision early is important, because if you haven't tracked that and you try to do it later on, you've already lost all of that data. So completing early is important. Hindsight 2020 sometimes, but. And ensure final percentages are documented and closed out with the ending date, especially when you go to settle at the end, having that in a place that's easy to find so that you can settle that cost share. All right. Off to Billy.
Okay. So amendments may be completed at any time during the cost share period. And if an amendment is needed to the original cost share document, you can create it, but it needs to be signed, and you need to be sure and number that amendment so that it's consecutive in order with your original document. You can do some minor revisions, but remember, minor is the key there. If that minor page that you did a simple description on and had it signed and dated, and if it ever got lost, would it have a significant impact on the implementation or reconciliation of your cost share? So if it's a major issue, then you don't want to just do a simple change on a piece of paper. All revisions, amendments, and attachments should be kept available with the original cost share. So you do want to keep those all together because they are part of the permanent record for that incident, and they are going to be needed later. So you're going to have any amendments to the original. If you have any of those minor attachments, maps, any associated supporting document needs to be numbered and attached for that package. And if you have a lot of pieces of paper, then you can make a nice summary page for those, but you want to make sure that those will get into that final fire package so that they can be referenced later. All right, so let's talk about our objectives. So we talked about the framework of a cost share, the cost share agreement's definition, the methodologies, our second level approval processes, if they're applicable, considerations and tips, and revisions or amendments to the cost share. And we'll look at any of the questions in the chat. I saw one from Julie regarding, while at the Great Basin Spring meetings, I thought I heard that cost share would be Black Acres only. I think every geographic area has their own preference, but again, every incident is unique and all the partners have to agree on what's best for that incident. So where that might be a preference, that's not a definite.
One thing, oh, I wanted to mention something that I think I forgot was pass-throughs. Um, so there may be times when you have a cost share agreement, and maybe you have a partner that's not signatory on the master agreement that you're operating on. There may be some pass-throughs that could happen, and I'm thinking of an example of a fire marshal or state mob type of situation where you have the fire departments come in. And they have some structure protection responsibility, but they're not attached to an incident management team. They may want to share in some camp support costs. And if they don't have a relationship on the master agreement, they may use a state to do a pass through. And so you'll see that while they're not signatory on the cost share, sometimes you'll see those mentioned in cost shares on how you'll recoup those costs through that pass through. So I just wanted to mention that as something that happens.
Great to add. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat.
I know. I thought there would be tons of questions on cost shares, but maybe sometimes it can be overwhelming if you've not done one very often. I remember when I first came into my position learning, relying heavily on my Forest Service counterparts, Heidi and you, Billy. Help! Thank you both so very much for the presentation. That was phenomenal. Appreciate it. I think the key takeaway I have is if folks aren't sure what to do, reach out to your leads in your state or your geographic area. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And of course, your cooperation with your state and local cooperators is 100% key with these. So with that, we are done with our session today. I did want to put a plug in for tomorrow. Oh, there is a question. I'm sorry. Anything you want to share about cost shares and eISuite tracking?
So we used to use eISuite a lot more for cost share tracking. We used to create divisions and things like that. I think the biggest thing is making sure that costs are in the eISuite database and that they're accurate. And so we can, provide timely and accurate reports for agency administrators to make decisions. But as far as like using eISuite for settlements, we don't typically do that a lot, but we could use them as a tool, use eISuite as a tool for cost share on the back end. So we do that in the Pacific Northwest. We use some of the reports for like weighted averages, things like that. But I haven't seen eISuite used as much like to do divisions and things like that like we used to. So just accurate costs.
Yeah, we want to set on those actual costs. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Any more questions? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Nothing else in the chat. So the plug for tomorrow, everybody, we have one more session tomorrow morning starting at 0800 Pacific time. We're covering dispatch and IROC overview, the IRPP and the pay caps. And we have an open forum Q&A. So the NWCG IBC folks will be online. Any of our sessions that we've had this week, whether you watched it live or not, you are welcome to stay on tomorrow at the end of the session for Q&A. Ask any questions you want. Maybe even if we didn't cover it, you can ask the question and we might just have an answer. So thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it. And we'll see you all tomorrow morning.
Thank you.